Pastor Brenda White. Is she here? Has anybody seen her? Okay, thank you.
So the first year you had.
We have.
Willie's going to be the one talking.
So Andrew Jackson and his wife, those are the two that we were focusing on. And Matilda is the one that was on the plantation. So Jaron was saying when we were practicing that it was a different part of your family. It's the Andrew and Matilda. So we know Matilda was there, and we think Andrew was there also.
But you don't know that connection that you have that as a family tradition. We haven't been able to do
that. They were actually, they were in the taking.
So I'll be sitting down there.
Yeah. 2 out right now. There's less than that. So
We'll be able to see you.
we'll have a break.
And that's what they're trying to do.
No, all I said next class, not to run away.
You won't be able to see
One has to go.
Not this class.
What's your count, sir? Okay, thank you. How's the count going?
That's good. Big decision for a lot of these kids. You can look at that instead of having
Good choice.
Yeah.
Right down.
People don't use paper anymore.
I know.
You should know. I have paper.
He's got everything.
Is that right in the rain paper? No.
All right, welcome everybody. My name is Alicia Chang. I am the director of the Tacoma African American Family History event, and I welcome you to our 3rd annual Family History event. This is such a beautiful gathering. It's wonderful to see all of you this morning, and I'm just so overjoyed that you are all here today to connect and to connect with each other and to connect with your ancestors. On behalf of our committee, I welcome all of our friends, neighbors, and community members. I'd like to give a special welcome to any dignitaries that we have in the audience, and in particular, the Honorable Judge Carl Williams from Pierce County District. Thank you for being here today. We thank you for joining us today in this space where we have an opportunity to connect with each other and to connect with those who have passed on. In 2022 was our first annual African American Family History event. It took us quite a few years to shape that event, but we never knew how much it would transform lives, and we're so grateful that you could all be here to be a part of that. Our philosophy throughout this journey has been to keep things small, to keep it simple, and to give it time. This is a philosophy that we adopted from our presenter today, Tom Reed. Our mission and our hope is that each of you feels connected to your ancestors' lives, their stories, through the Tacoma Family Search Center, and that you discover a heritage that makes you proud. To open our conference today, I'd like to invite Bishop Lawrence White to offer our opening prayer. He is the bishop of the Church of the Living God in Tacoma.
Can we bow our heads? Eternal God, we come today grateful of heart for this day that you have given us. Thank you, O God, for life and health and strength and liberty in you. Thank you, God, for this diverse group of men and women and young people and families who are gathered here today to pay honor to your heritage, the heritage that you have given us through your Son, Christ. Father, we ask that our time together today be fruitful, that we listen and glean and learn not only of our heritage, God, but of the work that you continue to do throughout the annals of history. God, we pray for every speaker, every presenter today, and we ask that there be liberty in this place. We thank you for your love, which has been demonstrated by sacrificing and giving us the gift of your Son, Jesus. We love you, Master, but we say thank you again for your demonstrated love. It is in the name of your Son, Christ, we pray. Amen. Amen.
That was a perfect prayer. Thank you, Bishop. A few years ago, there was an article published by NBC News. A reporter noted that there's a surge in Black people using various means to increase our connection to family members who came before us as a way of bolstering our identity. These discoveries of bloodlines generate a sense of self that can be profound and can even alter how we look at ourselves. I would add to this quote that digging into our past and making ancestral discoveries can provide us with a sense of pride, a way to feel proud of who we are and who we can become. This year, our committee thought it would be inspiring for our keynote to go through a journey. And that journey would entail this individual making discoveries through the Family Search Center. And where our hope is that he will inspire you to do the same. To introduce our keynote today, I'd like to welcome Mary and Garen Anderson. They are our Tacoma Family Search Center directors.
Yeah, as she said, we are co-directors of the Tacoma Family Search Center. I always thought it was funny or strange how people say, I mean, our purpose right now is to introduce Keynote, WIllie. And I always thought it was strange how people get up to introduce somebody and they say, this person needs no introduction, and then they go on for a whole bunch of time about how they're supposed, all this stuff. So I feel a little bit weird about it, but that's what we're called on to do, so that's what I'm going to do. Okay, so Willie Stewart is a native Texan, and his family were sharecroppers. He comes from a family of 11 children, 7 boys and 4 girls. Mr. Stewart received a BS degree from Texas Southern University in 1957 and a master's degree from PLU in 1969. Willie had a long career in education in the Tacoma School District from 1960 to 96. He was a teacher for 6 years, assistant principal, and the first Black principal in Tacoma District. He was principal for 12 years and an assistant superintendent of human resources. Willie also served our country in the military, where he was on active duty for 2 years Later, Willie was a reservist for 30 years, where he retired as a Colonel 06 in 1990. Willie has served in our community extensively with the following organizations: Palmer Scholars, Boys and Girls Club of South Puget Sound, Tacoma Athletic Commission, Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity, and Urban Grace Church. This is things that Willie gave me, and just from talking to people around here, he's been on a whole lot more than what we're talking about.
A lot.
In addition to, let's see, okay. In addition to his community service, he's also participated in civic duties such as the Tacoma Human Rights Commission, Tacoma School Board, Tacoma Housing Authority, Pierce County Housing Authority. His wife, Faye Neal, passed away in 2022 after 62 years of marriage. They have one son, a daughter, and a granddaughter. His passion, all sports. And just listening to his conversations with people around here, he brings that up with probably 2/3 of the people he talks to. And he knows massive minutia that I could never keep track of. Others say Willie works around the clock to make Tacoma, Pierce County, and the world a better place for all. Okay, so that was the formal introduction. Now for the more personal part. I feel a little bit silly introducing Willie to you because probably nearly half of you in here already know him. And in a lot of cases, you probably know him better than I do. He helped Mary get her start in special ed teaching in Tacoma District. And I know him from the locker room at the downtown Y. The project, things that I've noticed about him is that he's always smiling, always friendly, hardworking, and looking to support a good cause. The project, like Alicia was saying, we decided to do something a little different this year. Instead of just having the keynote speaker give an inspirational talk, we wanted them to actually get in and work with it and work with us and see how we can help him discover his family. We set up a family search account for him, and he brought in this shoebox full of photographs and funeral programs mostly. And I used the equipment in the center here to digitize all that and put it up on Family Search. And he went through and helped to label. We haven't got to all the pictures yet. There was 285 of them.
Got 103
There's 103 that are actually labeled, but there's 285 pictures in there off of the stuff that he brought. We haven't had time to get to all of it, and he tells me he's just starting to get on a roll. So we're going to be continuing to work with that, and so I've done mostly that, and Mary has gone through and done most of the genealogy research and found some pretty cool stuff. She's had a little bit of help from Mike Allen and me and Lloyd Oakes, if he's in here somewhere. I don't see either one of them, but I think they're probably in the other room. My other hat in the church is I work with the young men. I teach them how to not drown when you're kayaking and how to set fire to stuff. And because of this, they think I'm old, And so my nickname or trail name is Brother Dirt. And in talking to Willie, I noticed, I mean, they do that because I'm old, obviously, but in talking to Willie, he was principal of Lincoln High the summer I graduated from high school. So I only hope that I'm half as sharp as his age. I'm going to be running the slides for his presentation, and she'll finish up the intro part.
So I really had a great time meeting with Willie in the center, and we were able to take his memories and his information, and we actually found, we checked 2,318 records, and of those we found almost 2,000 that were his family sources. And we were able to add 292 people to Family Search that are all related to Willie and his wife. And in doing that, we were able to go back as far as 1810 on one line, 1818 on another line, 1820, 1823, 1820, 1831, and 1842, which is remarkable. Yeah. Yep. So we researched lots of different things, and we were able to come up with some wonderful things that Willie is going to show you. And he's a joy to work with. The center can offer the same to all of you, and we'd love to see you there and help you find your family and have you, I mean, you can come in with a scrap of paper and your cell phone, and we can find something for you. We totally can. And all of the services are free. Willie did hire me. He was the first one that hired me in teaching. He gave me an emergency sub-certificate while I was in my master's program and allowed me in the Tacoma schools to substitute in 29 different schools in special education during my master's program. And that thinking on my feet experience made me just a much more prepared teacher when I went out into having a full-time job. And I was so grateful for him and for his trust in me, and how personable he was and how he made me feel so good right from the start. And I was super impressed. And so, is that a name I will remember my whole life? Oh, yes. And the chance to work with him again was exceptional. And to give back for what he gave me. He was a gatekeeper that opened the door for me. And I got a chance to open the door to family history for him. So without further ado, Willie Stewart.
Thank you to the Andersons. But before I can begin my formal presentation, I have to acknowledge the presence of a bishop here today. And Pat Garland, I've known for a long time through other associations. And more importantly, the person who probably kept me alive, Dr. Charles Weatherby. And then I had to honor my first position in Tacoma was Dr. Betteridge in Payne. Dr. Betteridge's son is here today. And there are many others in the audience. I'll mention a couple of others as I go through my presentation. The family search opened my eyes to the point that I was able to see things that I never saw before. I was able to reminisce based upon some things I had forgotten about that were so important to me in my life. There were so many options. And then Mr. Anderson said, we have to narrow it down. We can't do it all. It'll take 10 years for it. So I made the conscious decision to do the life search through my father's side of the house. And based upon that is the presentation for today. Slide 1, please. This is a picture of Africa. Now, I know that I came from Africa through the lineage, but Africa is a huge place. So on the next slide, you will see the different places which persons from Africa were sent to different places as slaves. South America, North America, and other areas. But it was my decision to focus on the next slide, which is Andrew Jackson and Matilda Wicks. And through the work of the Anderson Lee and me, we were able to get some real facts about them. One thing I remember most, just listening to my grandparents and others talk, that there was a relationship to the family coming from Tennessee, which led to it being possibly Andrew Jackson, who was a huge owner of slaves, a big plantation, and as we also know him, is the role of the person who followed to the presidency after the assassination of Abraham Lincoln. Now, this represents some families on his plantation. We were not able to specifically recognize any of those names on this, but through the next slide information, we were able to get some validation, which shows some important things about them. The number of slaves he had, the Andrew Jackson and Matilda Wicks, which would be the great-grandparents, which led to my grandfather. Next slide. Okay. Charles William Tate, who ended up coming to Texas, very wealthy, a physician, very gifted, college graduate, university graduate, and a medical school too. And he was considered one of the 10 richest persons in the Colorado County where I grew up. And wealth primarily was based on the number of slaves he had. And then later it was transformed to other forms of property. Next slide. Okay. Now, Louis Stewart, Abbott Jackson, that's where my father comes in. Next slide. Okay. It is believed that Mr. Jackson plantation somewhere between Nashville, Tennessee, and some other section. We don't know the exact location, but that's the belief. Next slide. Okay. This is the period in which the Emancipation Proclamation was made, between 1862 and 1865. An interesting thing about that, when that proclamation was made, it did not reach the entire country, primarily because of the mode of transportation by horses. And so when you hear the 19th of June celebration, slaves had been freed earlier, but it took the military by horseback to get to Galveston, Texas, to announce that the slaves were free. Thinking about this, to one of my older friends, who is now deceased, but well over 100, was talking about when that message was delivered, the blacks had no property, no jobs, no form of security, no housing. So even though they had been abolished, they could still continue to live in a different capacity with their owners, but with some freedom. Next slide. This shows the Louis Stewart over here. He was in the military. And he deserted the military, and the records show that. Now, the interesting thing about when he deserted, I'm not sure why, whether it was because he didn't want to fight or he was concerned about reconnecting with his family. And according to the information we received, many of the persons who deserted, not because they didn't want to fight, but they wanted to see how their families were doing. And in the process, they never were reconnected with their owners. Next slide. Okay. Now, this is where he's in the military here. This shows the birth of his kids here in 1861 and 64. Next. Okay. Will Stewart Sr., that's my grandfather. That's my father's father. Next slide. Okay. This is my dad and my mother. We said Willie Stewart. My grandfather had several children. Uncle Robert, Uncle Ivory, Uncle Allen, Uncle Jake. The interesting thing about Uncle Jake, his family pretty much moved from farm to farm, harvesting for their livelihood. In fact, Dr. White had a chance to meet one of Uncle Jake's sons. Okay. He was able to meet Uncle. Okay. He was able to meet Uncle Jake's, one of his sons down in Omaha, Nebraska. The interesting thing of the sons, Ivory Stewart and Jake Stewart. Next slide. Okay, this is showing some documentation of the marriage and whatnot. Next slide. Okay, this is a wedding certificate of my grandfather and great-grandfather and grandmother. Next slide. Okay, this is a picture of Robert Stewart, my uncle. And the reason why I want to put that on, he was living in Columbus, Texas, and he had 9 children by his first wife, and she died. He moved 13 miles away to a place called Eagle Lake, remarried, and had over 13 kids. When he died, I was told that 22 of the 23 kids were at the service. I was out here, I wasn't able to get back for that. But there's a significance, so I wanted to share that about it. The other thing is, most of my family didn't know what a camera looked like or own one. Most of the pictures, unfortunately, I received later were pictures at their memorial services, not on regular pictures. Next slide. Okay. Now, I talked about Jake earlier, hired out family, and it was interesting that there was a lifestyle for him. Next slide. Okay. If you notice here, I want to share this. This is a grave stone of my parents, a correction of my uncle, Ivory, and Cordelia. When all of us were born, we were born by a midwife, and then the information was recorded in the courthouse. So someone ended up with putting D at the end, and others with the T in the end. So every time we got together, we would have to say Stewart and Stewart family, but yet we're all of the same blood and the same family. Uncle Ivory was an interesting person. I never knew him to work. However, I did discover 2 things: that he did have a real skill on locating water wells for the area. Also, he always had a new automobile. And I found out later that he spent some time in the prison in Texas. So I asked what happened. Well, he was a bootlegger. Very, very, very skillful at it. And his competitor turned him in. And so that's why he ended up in prison. And every time I would go home, I could go to one location, and he was always there in his little pickup truck with his gun on the back, just sitting. He would sit for 5, 6, 8 hours in the front of their store, and that was their style. And in fact, to the point that one of my brothers adopted the same lifestyle of going to the store and just parking after they had retired. Next slide. Okay. This is when Grandpa died in 1952. It was a practice of the service before the service had to be on a Sunday. And the reason why all the service was on Sunday is because they had to work 6 days a week. No one was free. But on the night, the Saturday night, there would always be a wake, an all-night wake in the home. And so on that specific date in September, that Saturday night, now my grandmother had a lot of grandsons and granddaughters. I didn't attend the wake because I played a football game that Saturday night. And I had a little scar. And so while I walked into the house, in the midst of thinking about mourning and all the rest, this is a Sunday just before the funeral, she pointed her finger right at me and said, "You didn't come to the wake last night. And that's why God punished you with that injury." Well, the thing that was more amazing to me, that of all of her persons who came by, she could recognize one didn't come. That shows you the love and compassion. That family was all important to them. Yeah, and so in later years, I started reflecting on that. At that time, I didn't even think about that. Later years, I would. Next slide. Okay, now it comes to my time as my family. And you see, my mother also had some family members. I want to talk about Earlene Stevenson. That's my mother. Empress Stevenson, Eunice Stevenson, two of her sisters. And then over here, you see my family over here. Next slide. Okay, this is Empress Stevenson, never married, drove a blue Model T with a coupe. And I still remember when she filled it up, she would also give them just $1. And I thought she was cheap, but I realized the tank was only 10 gallons and the gas only cost 9 cents a gallon. That didn't mean much to me at that time. However, she started out teaching in a one-room school out in the rural area. And then with consolidation and everything, she moved to the little town of Weimar and began teaching at Carl Downs High School. At that time, it was Weimar Colored High School. Carl Downs was one of the famous African Americans who was successful in the military. They named it after him. But what was unique about her was the love she had for her mother and the love she had for our family. And being the leader in education, that meant so much to the family. And so I always loved and cherished her. And I spent each summer with her and her mother, along with the first cousin. And that was a rich experience. To prove her giftedness as an educator, when the decision was made to integrate the schools in 1965, it took me 11 years after 1954 Brown versus Board of Education to integrate. She was the first one selected to teach in the now integrated high school in the area of English. And she was well respected and loved. Next slide. Now this is her sister, Eunice Stevenson. Eunice made a decision to live in Houston. And she substituted for quite a few years before she was able to get a job with the Houston Independent School District. Houston was a huge black community with the greater part of Houston, and she was highly successful too as an English teacher. And what I remember most about her, in 1989, I was in Lagos, Nigeria, visiting the Tacoma schools, and I stopped in one of the classrooms, and I saw a person, I thought I had recognized him. It was a person I had interviewed to come to Tacoma, but she said she would make a decision on whether or not she would marry this fellow from Lagos. So obviously she did. But they invited us to an event on that Saturday, and that was some African-American females that from America. And so, you know, being a robust Texan like I am, I walked up to the lady and we started talking. She said she was from Houston. I asked her where did she go to school. She said, "Oh, I went to E.O. Smith Junior High, Phyllis Wheatley High School." I said, "Do you remember a person in the English department by the name of Eunice Stevenson?" "Yes, that was my teacher." I said, "That was my mother's sister." So you never know. Next slide. Now, Willie Stewart and Faye Stewart. We became husband and wife August 13th, 1961, Yoakum, Texas, on the front porch of our parents. The unique thing about my wife, Faye, when we got ready to get married, you had to have a marriage certificate. Her house where she was born was right in the middle of two counties, DeWitt County and Lavaca County. So neither location had a record of her birth. And so her father had a slip showing her going into the kindergarten 5 year in 1943. So we went to this justice of peace, and having attorneys at that time in those small towns, justice of peace, some highly respected citizen. And so we approached him for an interview for her to get a certificate. And I remember the exchange, and it shocked me. He was talking to my father, and he said, "You said you're from Yoakum?" He said, "Yes." "Do you remember that great baseball team in 1939? He said, "Yes." And my father said, "Yes, you were the catcher." "Thank you." Gave us a certificate. I mean, it's amazing thing. Okay, so we're at a union. Next slide. Okay, before I go to slide, this is the slide, it's a great slide of my mother and father. You notice this is spelled S-T-E-W-A-R-T this time. If you look at that, my father died at the age of 52, my mother at the age of 66. And what was significant about that, now there are 11 boys and girls in our family. I'm number 10. My mother was 16 when Clarice, the first, was born, 38 when I was born, 43 when my baby sister was born. All by midwife, and we all came out very healthy, and itself is a miracle. But this is in Willis Working Cemetery in Columbus, Texas. The unusual thing about this, there are 4 cemeteries, all right next to each other. One is for the African Americans, the one to the left is for Catholics, 3 cemeteries, the others for the other group. And the city maintains, well, the support for them come by groups. So the least amount of service is to the African American cemetery. But what we've done, many of us send money back to the location for them to maintain them. But at some point that has to end, and I hope it doesn't become an overgrown place. Next slide. Okay, I'm up to the top. This is me. I'm living. That's all the other brothers and sisters ahead of me. Next slide. Okay, this house is beautiful now. My parents never had an opportunity to live in a house like this. This was really considered upscale, but today it would be considered a shack. But this is the home that was occupied by my sister, 3212 Anita Street, Houston, Texas, 3rd Ward. I spent 4 years there, and what is significant about that home, no brother or sister of mine had ever gone to college. My sister's job, where she made a decent living, if she's illegal today, she worked in the dormitory that fed the athletes only. You cannot do that anymore. You have to have it open to all. But at the University of Houston, and my brother-in-law worked for Hinkin Pelock, which would be Kroger up here, and in the warehouse. Today, if they were still alive, those jobs are all gone. But they insisted, so this is the highest level of living I ever had in Texas, was in that place. Next slide. Okay. Now this is a picture of some of our brothers and sisters here, and usually when you see a picture like that, we mostly had a symbol for a funeral member, and then we would always take a picture after that. And the person in the white suit was the oldest of our family, Clarice, named after the great-grandmother, Riss. The interesting thing about Clarice, she was a maid her entire life, but it was a very unique relationship. And I'm convinced, because of our own religious faith and belief, she served one family, and before she was married, she lived in a little house behind the family. That was in 40, 41, 42. Then she did get married. Her husband joined her there until they were able to acquire their own home. But what was unique about this, it's not a time when you normally have a 4, whatever plans are for investments, but they managed her finances. Then the mother died, then the daughters took over, and then the granddaughters. And when my sister died at the age of 95, the 2 years before, they took care and managed all of her affairs, and so open and honest, they wanted to give a receipt of that work to me and a receipt of that work to my sister. I said, I have the confidence that it's your love will not allow you to do anything that's not proper, and let them send the bill from the sister. But at the service, what I will always remember, when they introduced the brothers and sisters who were there, the 2 granddaughters stood up. Only 2 Caucasians in the crowd, 500 people. She said, she's our family too. Yeah. What a great illustration of love and compassion, the impact that she had on her life. Next slide. Now this is her 90th birthday celebration. The clever here, they have family members, but the one in the red shirt is LJ, and you'll see his picture again. Now he is well in his 70s here. And this birthday celebration was in San Antonio. My brother had never left Colorado County. And this was the first night he ever spent in a hotel. And he was so scared, his daughter had to come and stay with him. Next slide. Okay, this is he right here. This is LJ. So what I want to say about this, he never left home. He was drafted for the military, but was rejected because his feet were flat. Today, they give him a cushion. And he did farm work. Then he got sophisticated and worked in the ice house. Refrigeration killed that. Then he went to the gravel pit, and that was fine until they had to move, but he wasn't moving, so he stayed home. And then he did some work at the roadside parks. Now, I know one thing, because some friends of mine from told me that your body is the banker for everyone who is waiting to get their Social Security check. And so I asked him, why would they have all their money? And they say, you know, your brother had a strong relationship with the police chief, and therefore he was allowed to have this gambling shack. And that's why he had his resources. And also to validate this, I don't have the picture of the gentleman, the insurance agent I met at this service of one of the other brothers was able to tell me exactly how much money he had and the bank he had it in. So they all communicated. Now on the end is the oldest brother, Leslie. We call him Molasses because he moved slowly all the time. and he worked in his career after he left the military, he worked in a smokehouse, Armor Meatpacking Company, which he eventually, because of the excessive smoke, ended up dying with lung cancer. And the two to the left are still living. The one in the right is 92 years of age, just had a stroke last year. And then the left one there's a baby sister who lives in Los Angeles, retired from the post office. Next slide. Now this is very important to me. This is Clarice's only child, Joyce. When she was born in 1936, my mother took her and raised her as a member of our family. And upon the death of my mother, when everyone was introduced, including her mother, she stood up to the audience and said, no, that's my mother also, because of that relationship and what it meant to her in those early years. Next picture. Okay. WIllie Stewart and Faye Stewart. Next slide. Okay. Part of in the community, I was a member of the Army Reserves for a long time, and I was the poster child. I had to do a thing. My first 5 years I was enlisted, the last 25 I was commissioned. And I was often put on posters to promote asking persons to join the Army Reserves. Next picture. Next slide. Okay. Now, to the left is my picture that's in the Willie Stewart Academy that's at 9th and Broadway. And that's a dictionary at the school that was named after me about 7 years ago, designated for students who are 17 years of age, 14 credits short of graduation, where they can come and get one-on-one tutors. In the middle is my wife, and that picture was taken when during the time I was a principal of Lincoln High School, and we went to all the Lincoln events because I wanted to be a part of the students. So that was one of the more formal things we went. And to the right, to the final picture is my wife showing that also she was like all the rest, doing the Black Power and recognition. She wore the afro. Okay. Next slide. Okay. This is the picture of us younger days, and my son, Willie Jr., who is now 61, and my wife. My wife, at the age of 51, was diagnosed with Parkinson. She had it for 32 years, died June 18th, 2022, with the last 5 years being in a family home. And I have one daughter, I don't have a picture of her with this group. Next slide. Okay. I'm also involved in the community, and this group is very important to me. That's the group of the AAFHE chapter here in Tacoma. This organization was founded in 1906 at Cornell University. The unusual thing is that the first African American fraternity was founded on a predominantly white campus. They only had about 10 or 12 men on the campus. And that was a picture we took. It was instrumental because in 1969, we didn't have a chapter here. And I was the only one in this city with a degree and also a previous member of the fraternity from college. So I was able to, through a friend, I went to Fort Lewis and Madigan, and we had 3 positions out there, and we had a pharmacist and a business major, and we formed the fraternity, Alamo Lambda chapter, 1969, April 5th here in Tacoma. And I'm proud to say in the audience is a member of our group, our police chief of Tacoma, Avery Moore, and then also his other colleague, Berwin Smith, also members of this distinguished group. Next slide. Okay. This is why Dr. WIllie comes into my life, because it was he who, through the physical examination, detected that I had prostate cancer 33 years ago. And December the 9th, 1991, I had the surgery. And after that, we formed what we call the prostate support group, 4 of us. Now we have a great number. And present in our audience today are 2 members of that group, John Huber and Myron Thompson. Oh, there's a third one back there. Oh, that's a whole group. Where my support group stand? My support group, would you stand so they can see you? Oh, they're bashful. Okay, thank you. And we're very proud to do that. Next slide. Okay, I just want to summarize. First of all, I'm grateful for the opportunity to be involved with Family Search. Without the Andersons, I would not have as much knowledge or ability to recall if it were not for them to get me engaged in this. And I want them to know this is just the tip of the iceberg. They have a lot more work to do. Because I just used one strand, and there are many more to go. And it's important for you to reflect on your family, the traits, For example, when we talked about the Tate plantation, no one has to tell me about what it was like. That was the place where I picked cotton up until 1952. Black soil, and the stalks would grow, be as taller than I am, which meant it was good soil, fertile. And the Wicks branch here, Madison, I didn't know his name either. I called him Uncle Buck. Through their research, about his name is Christopher Madison Wicks. He lived there on that place. And I still remember, and I shake because at the end of the day, we're getting ready to return to our home, you will see rattlesnakes coming out of the woods. Out of the pasture going into the cotton field. So that was a significant experience for me. So I want to say to any of you that it is rewarding to do family search. If you're not able to figure it out, just come here. And I'm sure there are others than the Andersons, but see, I know them, and they're proving themselves to be honorable and supportive, and I love that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That was amazing. One of the words that we use in the genealogical world is connection. I hope you felt that as Willie was speaking. I heard some connection, definitely some confirmation. I connected with you. I'm going to connect you with my mom because you have a lot in common. She served in the military. She's a principal in South Kitsap. There's no one else who is African American working in South Kitsap School District. Her husband of 43 years passed last year from Parkinson's. She grew up in the South. Our family inherited a cotton plantation as well, where her ancestors, some of her family still lives. Anyways, the connections go on. John Hubert, I taught him at the Y. I'm a fitness instructor at the YMCA, and John was in my class for the first 10 years, probably, that I was teaching there. Thank you for allowing me to connect to you today. I appreciate you being here. I hope you felt a little bit of what family history can do, of making those discoveries, doing the work. It not only allows us to connect, but I don't know if you could see, you picked cotton growing up. I'd be mad about that. But you can see what that has done for his soul, the healing and the joy that it has brought him to know these stories. I strongly encourage you to not just let the Andersons do all the work for you, but you get in there and you do some yourself. We have a special treat for you all today. So maybe while you were listening to Willie, some stories came to mind, some thoughts that you had about your own life, about your parents' lives, your grandparents' lives, your aunts, your uncles, those young ones who were brought into your home and loved like they were your own. We put together a youth committee this year. They wanted some activities of their own this year and not to just come and work for us. But they actually, on their own, put together some oral history recording booths. So I would hope that today you took advantage of that. There are 3 of them. They're at the back of the building. There are 3 of them. So booth 1, 2, and 3. You can go in there. There's nice cushy seats in there. There's a ring light so that you look good on camera. You can put your phones up in that light to record a story if you want to do it visually. There are also other options and ways to record when you get into your Family Search account, and you can do just audio recordings. I highly recommend that. And there are instructions in there. And if you need help with that, please grab anyone who has a green tag on today. They know what to do. There are also guiding questions to walk you through if you need help recalling anything and recording those stories. So please take advantage of that. Those are open all day long, and you're welcome to go there. In addition to that, we also have connection stations, and those are in the gym. Some of you have already been taking advantage of that today. There are individuals, again, with green name tags who are ready to help you pick up from where you've left off or to get started. So again, take your device, go in there, the names that you have, the materials that you've brought today that maybe you want to digitize, like Willie shared with us that he's done. We also have resources to do that here today as well. Like I said, there are youth activities today, and actually our youth leaders have already gotten up. Most of them have on shirts that say, I have a story on it. So Alex, you saw Alex and John this morning. They did a dance for us in the gym. She's in the back. Say hi, Alex. And Boston is back there. That's my daughter. And Jordan is up here. She's in a blue hoodie. They have activities for any young ones you've brought with you today. And they're going to start right now in the Family Search Center. And these young ones are going to get them started with some activities. At the back of hopefully all of you picked up a little booklet, a program for today. Our schedule is in the front page, and there's some pages there to take some notes. Hopefully you're taking some notes while Willie was presenting today. At the back, you're going to find a survey. And I would hope that you would take some time today to fill out this survey and give us some feedback. Like I said, this is the 3rd annual event. So we're going to do it again, whether you like it or not. And how it changes and how we shape it is really up to you. What do you want from us? What can we provide for you? Who would you like to hear from next year? Give us some suggestions. Fill this out, tear it out, give it to any of us, again, with a green tag, or you can give it to me throughout the day or at the end of the day, and let us know what you would like. We're going to get started on next year's right after this today. Our committee is meeting at the end of this event today to talk about what we liked, what feedback we got, and we're hoping to share some of your feedback as well in that meeting. As you know, and maybe this is why you're here today, we have a free lunch for you this afternoon. That'll be in the gym, and that'll be midpoint of our day after part 1 of Tom's presentation. During lunch, we have a special treat where we do some storytelling. So maybe you want more of what Willie gave us today, but from other individuals. And I have a couple people lined up, but I need a couple more. So if you have a story that came to mind again, that you would like to share, something that you think would be inspiring, funny, motivating, that would get people going in their family history, please come and grab me and let me know. And I'll get you set up for that during lunch. And those are just, don't worry, just quick 3 to 5 minute stories, okay? And I won't let anybody linger, I promise, all right? I think that's all I have. So that's plenty. Okay. All right. Hint. Okay. We're going to go ahead and we've gone over. We were going to have a little bit of a break. If you need a break, you're more than welcome to get up and stretch your legs. There is, I believe, extra breakfast in the gym and water if you need it. But without further ado, we're going to go ahead and transition to part 1 of Tom Reed. And he